Hey mate, want to see a naked lady? Well, not what you're expecting, I guess, and I must say she's not really my type. Bit of an eating disorder thing going on here, but she is graceful, I'll say that for her. Now, I was on a holiday in New Zealand recently and we went to a place called Clyde. Now, Clyde is a small town in the central Otago region of the South Island of New Zealand. It's about an hour's drive southeast of Queenstown, and I must say it's one of the cleanest places I've ever been in my whole life, and it was beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go there, check out a restaurant called Paulina's. The food was sensational, and if you've got an interest in steam engines, steam technology, there were some really interesting artifacts in the garden and the surrounding area, and just the design of the building itself was fantastic. However, there was a little artist studio just up the street, and we had a look after a bottle of wine, I should say, and we saw this sculpture in the garden and fell in love with it immediately. It's by an artist called Annika Besta, and the name of the sculpture is Ipulamon. I hope that's the correct pronunciation, but it's a ballet term, and it's to do with the way that the arms and the shoulders and the head are carried in this particular ballet position. She's made of bronze, and when we saw her in the garden, she was on a concrete column, and there was no way in the world that was her coming home with us. We don't have the capacity in our checked-in luggage for that, so we bought her as is, and it's my job now to be able to make the concrete column for her display. Now, there are two all-thread sections on the bottom of the feet, and these have been cast into the bronze, and luckily they are stainless steel, because I was concerned initially that these are just going to corrode being outdoor in the weather, but being stainless steel, we've got a better chance of this standing up to the elements. Also, last year I went on a holiday to a place called Étretat in Normandy, in northern France, and while we were there we saw this amazing landscape, and I'm sure I've seen this before in a James Bond film at some point. I can just imagine speedboats sort of cruising along at high speed through the pillars and along the coastline there. It would have looked absolutely fantastic. And the thing we noticed about the landscape there was that the cliff face has this beautiful layered structure. It looks like some sort of sedimentary rock, mixture of chalk and some sort of darker material, probably volcanic ash, but I couldn't be sure. And what I want to do is to be able to recreate that texture and that colour in the concrete. So we're going to be using white Portland cement with a mixture of white gravel, and we're going to be using some black gravel as well, and try to do this in a sort of a sedimentary layered look. Now, if you've ever watched any of my videos, you will know that just about everything I do is a prototype. Nothing is rehearsed in this project. It's a one-off. I'll probably never do it again, and well, expect failure, but if we get success, so that's going to be a bonus. So what we'll do now is we'll have a look at the form that I've made for the concrete. We're going to make up some steel reinforcement and give it a crack. It's going to be fun. Okay, so this is the form. Now, this is made of form ply, specifically designed for casting concrete or forming concrete. And I put some little fillets in the corners here just to soften the finished column so that it won't have razor sharp edges on it. So let's have a look at it from the other side. Okay, so this is the end from where we're going to pour the concrete, and we're going to do this in layers with two different mixers. And when we take this out of the form, or when we take the form off the concrete column, I'm going to wash down the outside to try and create that exposed aggregate look. And it will also soften it a bit. I don't want it to look like a piece of industrial concrete. Now we need to look at the top of the column and how that's going to be finished off. Okay, I have to talk over the rain on the roof. We were in drought a couple of months ago, and now it's sort of raining every day, so if it gets noisy, I'm just going to talk over it. Now, this is what I've made for the top of the column. This plate is going to get screwed down to the top of the form, and these two brass tubes here are to take the all thread that are cast into the bottom of the sculpture's feet. This little brass piece on top here is just silver soldered on, and that's going to prevent these tubes from pulling out of the concrete later. Now, the hole positions are really critical. I've sized these, checked them, made sure they're right before we go ahead and cast this. Now what's this, you might be thinking? And now this is just me over-engineering a straightforward project. I was worried about water sitting in these tubes and possibly corroding the bottom of the statue. So what I want to be able to do is to drain these tubes out, and these plastic tubes here are fitted into drilled holes in the bottom of each one of those brass tubes, and they are going to be cast into the concrete and later on pulled out, and that will leave a drain. Now if they get stuck, it doesn't matter, there's a hole through the tubing anyway. And what we're going to do now is to thread these tubes through pre-drilled holes in the side of the formwork, screw this all down, and then we can go ahead and make up the steel reinforcement cage to go inside. So let me try and get this all together and then we'll have a look at it. So it's going to go that way. Okay, so we'll get that screwed down there now. Alrighty, let's have a look at the sculpture in there and see what that looks like. Alright, so that's not fully pushed in there, but you get the idea. When this comes off later and we strip the form, we're going to have to grind off the top of the brass tubing because it'll be extended above the top of the column, but that won't be a problem. So you can get a better sense of how that's going to look when it's all finished, and part of the garden where this is going allows me to spotlight this at night. So yeah, she looks beautiful and graceful, and that's what we want. So I think you can just see down the bottom there where those two plastic drains are going to exit through the side of the column. Not going to see them when it's done, but give me a bit of peace of mind at least. Okay, here's the setup for the reinforcement cage to go inside the form. So I've got 6mm mild steel rod. It's not rebar, it's not deformed bar, it's just ordinary round rod. But remember, this is not a structural column, it's just sitting there in the garden. So it's not like it's under any load. And what we're going to do here is just tack all of this together with the MIG welder, and I've already set everything up at the correct spacing and angles, and I've set these little verticals over at the correct angle using the sliding bevel. So let's go ahead now and get this tacked together and try it in the form. Well, it's no Eiffel Tower, but it'll do. Okay, well these are the materials that I got for doing these two mixes. So we're going to do a mix of black and a mix of white, and then layer that together. So we start off with the white gravel. I got 20 kilos of that. We got 20 kilos of the black gravel, and we got two 20 kilo bags of this coarse sand, and I've got a 20 kilo bag of white Portland cement. So this is already weighed out into the correct quantity to do half the mix. So it's roughly 7 kilos. And the proportion we're going to end up with is 3 of gravel, 3 of sand, 1 of cement. And although that's not the traditional proportions for concrete, it suits the 20 kilo bag sizes that I bought. And let's not forget, it's not a load bearing structure. Certainly nice and white. And I think I put too much water in that mix, so I sort of topped it up with a little bit more sand and probably another half a kilo of white Portland cement. But that's sort of the consistency that's going to be good, and yeah, it's the right colour. Happy days. Again, it's probably a bit wet, but not structural, and it looks a bit white, but don't forget that when we expose the aggregate, we're going to see the black pebbles in that mix. I've got my form set up here, and I've just stabilised that by gripping it with one of those Black & Decker workmates, and I've got my 2 concrete mixes ready to go, and we're just going to layer this up and tamp it down with a stick as we go, just to get rid of any air bubbles that are in the mix. I'm just trying to be careful down the bottom here and not dislodge those pieces of plastic tubing that I put in place. At the end of the day, if it doesn't work, it's not that big a deal. I'm just giving those layers a tap as we go, try and settle the air out of it. And I've got a feeling I got way more mix than what I need, so I think I'm going to use a bit more white than the black, so the layers are thinner in the black areas, just to balance everything out. Now, You know what I forgot? You idiot, Mark. Oh. Well, there you go, that worked out. Can't believe I did that. You get so focused on a result and don't look around you. That's what went wrong. I had the thing sitting beside the form here ready to go. Ah, you goose. Okay, well that's turned out okay. I got tons of mix left over, so I was never going to run out. And apart from my monumental stuff up with that reinforcement, and I can see the comments already. I can see how that's going to play out. But the other thing is that there's a lot of moisture in this, and it's all seeping out the bottom of the form now, which is probably a good thing because we don't want excess water in our mix. And if that's able to drain freely out of the form, then it's going to cure a lot better. So I'm going to leave this for a while. When this gets to the point where it doesn't look wet anymore and it's starting to get that sort of a dry looking appearance to the surface, we can very, very carefully strip the form off and then try and wash down that outer surface to expose the gravel. So this is going to be at least, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, I guess. But we'll monitor that, and you can sort of do the finger test as well and just see how firm that is before we strip the form. And I'll turn this upside down before I strip the form off so that we don't have to sort of maneuver it without some support on the outside. I'm still confident. Alrighty, it's 3:15 in the afternoon. This has started to go off. I can feel that it's slightly warm. It's no longer possible to put an indentation in that surface there, and it's lost that wet look. And what I'll do now is take this outside, upend it, get ready to strip off the form, but I'll show you something else I've done outside. With the excess concrete that I had, I made up another form and I've half buried this in the garden where the column will eventually go. So this section here is slightly larger than the column itself. I've leveled that really carefully. And we can use this one as a trial run. So this, we wash this one off and it looks okay, then we can do the column itself. If it's too soon, we'll know when we do this one. I'll just take that one peg out for now, and I'll try washing this off. Just didn't want that peg in the way when I sweep it off. Alright, now just bear in mind, never done this before. I'm going to start off by just squirting a bit of water on there. Alright, well that's sort of like the look that I want. So you can certainly see the black gravel showing through, and the white gravel is also there on the surface, and it's not collapsing or disintegrating, so that's good. So I think we're good. I want it to be a little bit subtle. I like to show you close up. So you get a better sense of how that's going to look. And here are the white pebbles. I mixed a bit of the black gravel in this as well to see how it's going to go. Seems to be holding up quite well. This will need a final rinse off later on, and I think the deal is you meant to give it an acid wash as well, just to get rid of any of the cement paste that's still on the surface. But I think that's the look that I want. I've just got this out in the garden at the moment. It's sitting on a piece of plywood, and I've upended the whole thing. So what we need to do is get all the screws out now and just gently tape these panels off. I won't touch this top piece here. I think that needs to be staying in place. If I try and remove that, there's a danger we'll pull out those brass tubes and crack the top. You can actually feel the heat coming through from that form ply too, which indicates that that chemical reaction has gone off. And it's starting to rain. I might need to put the camera inside and come back. Alright, I've got all the screws out. It's going to give that a tap and see if we can get it loose. One screw still in there. Alright, certainly see the layers, but anyway it's raining, got to get the camera inside. This is the last side to come off. These have to be done very delicately because of these fillets. They tend to grab a bit more. I do not want to fracture any of this wet concrete away. Like tapping that, I can sort of feel it's loose. That feels very, very warm. It's surprising how much heat that gives off. Now these tubes, I'm going to leave them in place for a couple of days and then I'll try and pull those out. If it doesn't work out, I'm just going to cut them off level with the surface, and it's hollow anyway so the water will still drain. But it's surprising that the zebra effect that you're getting in the concrete. Okay, so now I need to try and wash this off and see how that goes. Let's go start from the top here. Alright, well that's sort of working. I think I need to be a bit more aggressive with the water, so I'm going to get the garden hose and just spray the whole thing down. It's sort of, maybe I left it too long, but it needs to have that structural integrity. It's not like a slab that's sort of fully supported in the ground. This had to be self-supporting when it stood up, so I probably left it longer than I should. Let's give it a good hard spray and see how that goes. It's probably worth noting I've changed over to a much stiffer bristle brush, like a scrubbing brush. And that seems to be working really well now. And the important point is knowing when to stop. I think you could probably overdo this. But that's starting to get the look that I want. And the texture. So I'm guessing the texture is an important part of it. It's got to look granular. Not like a finished piece of concrete. Well, that's looking good now. That's the way I want it. It's got a definite sedimentary layer effect in it. The gravel is exposed. It's looking more like stone than cement and concrete, and that's the effect that I was after. So yeah, you've done well, Mark, despite forgetting to put the steel in the form. You're going to have fun with that in the comments, aren't you? Need to get this top piece of plywood off here, and I'm sort of really worried if I lever this up, I'm going to tear a chunk of concrete at the top of the column. It's going to go around, drill around these brass tubes, just try and relieve some of the stress, and basically just chop out that middle section. Alright, I'm going to sort of grind a bit of that off, just try and make that slightly rounded on that edge there. And I'm going to cut these tubes off. Alrighty, well the next question is, will these tubes come out? It's just stretching. Ah, there you go. So that's worked. Let's see if we can get the other one out. Okay, that's a bit of a hole there, but that's okay. Probably put that to the side and have this as the front. Alright, well there it is in the garden, sitting on its base. I managed to drag it over here and get it up on that concrete base myself. I didn't get any video because it's been showering all day, but I got a single image with my phone, and I used straps and just got it close and lifted it up onto that concrete base. So let's get our dancer installed and see how she looks. Well, there she is, and yeah, certainly looks graceful, and Mrs. Prezzo is very pleased. That's got to be worth a plate of scones there somewhere. Now I've installed a light, and it's going to light that up at night, sort of like a low angle spotlight, so we'll come back after dark and check it out. Well, it's not fully dark yet, but I need some light for my camera, and what I've done is I've lit this from quite low in the garden, and I think what it does is it highlights the position of the arms in this particular ballet pose, which to me is the most beautiful thing about the sculpture. And I love the contrast between the rough textured exposed aggregate concrete and that really slick bronze. So did it turn out better than I expected? Yes, it did actually, despite all the mishaps, and yeah, I'm quite happy with it. I know it's different from my normal content, but I'm always up for a challenge. I love trying something new, and I learnt a lot in this particular project. So join me for the next one. Prezzo signing out. Thanks for watching.